opinion about baked lighting versus full real-time lighting?
Oh yes. Okay, so for everybody who's watching, who work with me, they're gonna know the answer right away. Is dynamic lighting all the way, all the time, if possible. That makes the life of everybody way easier for sure. Uh, Both have their pros and cons, that's for sure. It's just that static lighting, depending on the size of the project, the size of the game, it can be at time a bit hard. Like when you're building at preview quality, it doesn't matter. But when you reach a state in the production and you're baking at higher quality and production quality, when you have 20 level to bake, it takes a lot of time, not just for me, but for the entire production, because uh, as soon as somebody need to move an asset, we this gameplay asset, this section doesn't work. We need to change it every time. We need to rebake lighting, and so it's really time consuming, and also for even just for tracking performance, if the lighting is not baked and technical artists and engineer team, they want to profile the game to see if the performance are okay, the stats, everything work. If it's not baked, you're not going to get the actual result of those tests. So it's a few things that we need to consider with big bake lighting. The main thing that is it's good for, it's the performance of it. When it's baked, like static lighting, it costs nothing compared to dynamic lighting. Even though right now dynamic lighting is way better than it used to be. Like a few years ago, dynamic lighting was killing the performance every time. Right now, it's way more affordable. Well, that was a long answer just for saying that I prefer dynamic lighting.
Long answer is good. Good to give a reason behind some of these answers.
And
It's
especially with especially right now with Unreal 5, for everybody who start playing with it, with Lumen and all those things, I feel like that having a nice dynamic lighting setup really bring back the lighting artist job of a more of an artist and an art side job, because lighting artists are always been kind of a in between with doing art stuff and doing technical stuff, because you have to juggle with both of them. But with like Lumen that's coming up with Unreal 5, I'm hoping that the lighting artist job is going to be way more about just doing some art, because at the end of the day, that's what we are, right?
I think most people will probably be using Lumens for high-end console, high-end PC at least. I think it will be a long time before Xbox, the old one,
Yeah.
will run it. But do you ever use a dynamic and baked? Like, would you do your baked and then fill in more with dynamic, or how are you, that's not the workflow you use?
For this game right now, we using dynamic. We're using static lighting, but we also use stationary light with dynamic shadow in some area. So it's not completely static, no moving shadow at all. We still use stationary light. So in some key place, some key light, we have real time shadow for character and monster. But we are a bit more limited than having it full on dynamic. So yeah, that's, and at some point, like we have to, the way we're using it, like for example, or every torch in the game, we use a light function to give the light some flicker to make it look like real fire. So at the level standpoint, sometimes we use more stationary light, and then the more it goes up in the level, it becomes static because we don't need it. Like those, like you see on screen, those light on top doesn't need to be dynamic, because the player is never going to be so close to it, so it can be static, and it's not going to matter. But it's nice when you're near a torch that the actual light coming up from the torch is flickering, giving the sense of an actual flame.
So you would say dynamic lighting for you is best used if you want some interactivity, visible interactivity, basically.
Yeah, that for me, that's why it's super nice when you see like a player moving. You have some tree that casting real time like leaf shadow on the ground. It gives you a really nice art opportunity to have something a bit more dynamic in your environment. Also, it's nice for like nicer and crispier shadow, because dynamic lighting will always depend on like light map resolution and like a bunch of settings that can make the shadow look a bit blobby and not as sharp or as good looking as a nice dynamic shadow.